Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Antichrist Analysed. Sorry it's been a while, but today we're looking at the character of the Wilful King in Daniel chapter 11 in verse 36. Now you can understand why people would see the Antichrist fulfilled in this character, because Daniel 11 says this king will do as he pleases, he will exalt and magnify himself above everything God, and will say unheard of things against the God of gods. Then it says he will show no regard for the gods of his ancestors or for the one desired by women. And instead of them, he will be honored, a god of fortress. So yeah, you can understand why people may interpret it that way. Now, is the willful king the Antichrist? The most common interpretation of Daniel 11, and we're not going to go through that whole chapter because there are so many kings and rulers mentioned, it would take us a long time. But the most common interpretation is that verse 1 and 2 goes all the way back to basically Greece. I mean, this website here says that the four kings starting in Daniel 11 represent the kingdom of Greece, Alexander the Great. Then after him came four generals, four kingdoms, and then it goes into Egypt. Then it goes into Seleucus of Syria. So the north is talking about Syria. And then the despicable person, who we've already talked about in a previous video. This video here says that it is Antiochus Epiphanes. Now, we've already talked about in the other video that I said that it could be that the despicable person was actually Tiberius Caesar. So we have different interpretations there. However, after Antiochus Epiphanes, this article then goes all the way till the end, like 2,500 years later, down to the Antichrist. So Antiochus Epiphanes is basically verse 21 all the way to 28, and then when we get through verse 30, it goes all the way then to the Antichrist. Now, to me, I would just want to ask the question, where is the logic in putting that huge jump, that huge gap from Antiochus Epiphanes all the way to the Antichrist? What would be Daniel's agenda to shift 2,000 years into the future? And what would be the connection there? There is just no obvious connection to place the Antichrist at the end of Daniel chapter 11. Not only that, the other problem is that people say the Antichrist is also the despicable person in verse 21. Well, which is it? Is he the despicable person in verse 21, or is he the willful king in verse 36? Certainly Daniel 11 is talking about the chronology of history, the chronology of the empires that came from the time of Daniel to the time of Jesus Christ. So once again, I would want to say that the Antichrist has been inserted once again to the character of the willful king. So that would be the main problems with it. But also, Daniel talks about the end. I mean, what would the end be in Daniel's mind? Not our own mind. What would the end be from his understanding? Well, in Daniel 12, it talks about the end will come and the holy people will be scattered and be cut off. Certainly that is referring to the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD. And I think that when Daniel talks about the end, he is talking about the end of the Old Covenant age, leading into the New Covenant age, the age of the church, because it was the end of the old covenant regime. The temple was gone, the Levitical priesthood was terminated. Now the church had begun. The temple was the Christian church. And the reason I believe that is because in Daniel 2, we have the four kingdoms, Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome. Then the rock comes down, which is the arrival of Jesus Christ on the earth. The first time, not the second time. And that the rock became a mountain, the kingdom spread throughout the world. So, yeah, this willful king then is not the Antichrist, but it would have had to have been someone who was around at that time. Now, another interpretation is that this person says the willful king is actually Antiochus Epiphanes, so not the despicable person, but the willful king. which would make sense because some have also suggested that the little horn is Antiochus Epiphanes, and the abominations of desolations were committed by him when he put a statue of Zeus on the altar in the temple, slaughtered a pig on the altar of the temple, as the book of Maccabees tells us, and it shut the temple down. It was an abomination that caused the desolation. And then Jesus refers to that at the time in his life in Matthew 24. So to conclude, it's either someone, Antiochus Epiphanes, or one of those kings at the time of Jesus, I think, or certainly in the first century. But it's definitely not the Antichrist.